Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bridge, Connecting the Futures of Work and Education, Harappa Education's inaugural annual conference that brings together for the first time India's top academics and industry leaders on a single platform to foster the most crucial conversations on education and work. I am Nikhil Gambhir, Vice President, Engagement and Customer Success at Harappa, and your event host for this afternoon. Harappa Education is a learner-centered institution focused on solving the employability gap by helping students and working professionals with social, cognitive, and behavioral skills. Over the next 2 days, we will be joined by a stellar panel of 45 plus speakers from across the globe and over 1,000 senior leaders across industries and functions. The conversations promise to be novel, insightful, and provocative. So let's get started. I'm pleased to introduce to you Shresi Singh, founder and CEO of Harappa Education. Shresi is the driving force behind bringing the world of academia and industry here at Bridge and an inspiration for all of us here at Harappa. Hi Shresi, and over to you for the welcome address.
Thank you, Nikhil, and welcome to the first edition of Bridge, everyone. I couldn't be more proud and delighted to welcome you. Thank you so very much for joining us. I almost can't believe we are here. Ever since we began Harappa 2.5 years back, we've been so excited about putting such an event together, one that meaningfully connects the futures of work and education. Let me begin with the story of the track of music some of you might have heard just before Nikhil began. Performed by German-Japanese pianist Kishika Imizaka, and from a set within musician J.S. Bach's Goldberg Variations, this was a dense, complex piece. Dense because, as they call it in musical technical terms, it's a canon at the unison, which essentially means the two voices constantly intertwine and overlap. Much like academia and industry should maybe, but don't. Because Bach had to jump through so many hoops here, he takes some liberties with the harmonic structure. It's what we hope to do at the Bridge over the next 2 days as well. Cut across themes from academia, enterprise, and the larger world of pedagogy, technology, and learning to form new structures, new patterns, and new systems. The crisscross in our topics and conversations might not always seem intuitive, but we know the clash and the churn will hopefully lead us to new rhythms and melodies. It will show us fresh paths and what we hope are exciting, interesting diversions. We've conceptualized Bridge to work across 3 tracks, really so we could cover a rich range of themes and issues around higher education, changing learner expectations, online learning, workplace challenges, corporate training, pedagogical innovations, and the exciting, meaningful, and naughty realities of building and funding education enterprises. It's a packed treat of topics, speakers, and contexts. We hope you'll dive in and immerse yourself. The 3 tracks, as you can see, are called the College Workplace Continuum. Nikhil Gambhir, Vice President of Engagement and Customer Success at Harappa, will be your host for track 1. Track 2 is the Arts and Science of Learning. Learning, as we know, is a complex process and converges so many principles from psychology, neurosciences, cognitive theories, and Vipul Rathore, our Chief Content Officer, will play your host for track 2. Watch out for some fascinating sessions on track 2. And last but not the least, track 3, the education enterprises. To truly make a dent, we know that many models and systems of education and learning enterprises need to emerge and flourish in India. And Seema Chaudhary, our peerless Vice President of Curriculum and Programs, will play your host for track 3. Now, if we go on, much like Bach did, we've brought to you engaging formats, which sometimes bend, conventional theories and conventional models and formats of what you see, really in the hope that we can genuinely bring alive a virtual conference. So 6 formats of sessions will be the huddle, the masterclass, colloquy, solution room, keynote, and encounter. And through them, we will have a variety of interaction tools, polls, surveys, an interesting feature called the reflection wall, through which we will use a very interesting tool called Padlet, so we can collect and gain insights from what the speakers are saying, as well as what the audience feels. Now, next, let me just give you a quick glimpse of the agenda for today and the sessions that I hope you won't miss. And I think you're going to have a tough time to choose between some of the sessions across track 1, 2, and 3. So of course, we begin with a keynote by Mr. Ajay Piramal, chairman of the Piramal Group, on future-proofing our workforce and how to thrive, not survive, in the spirit of the thrive skills that we hold so dear at Harappa. It's after that session that we break into the 3 tracks of track 1, track 2, and track 3. And as you can see, right after the keynote, there is a session happening in all 3 tracks. The track hosts and track managers will ensure that you know which session is going on in which track through the time that you spent with us on the bridge, and we'll give you the links and guide you to the sessions that you need to go to. Fascinating sessions really throughout, and we end with another keynote called A True Unicorn, who is the 21st century. As you can see, even in our headlines and session titles, we're constantly borrowing from worlds of different parts of the ecosystem of learning, whether it's from venture capital, to bring it into the session. We truly hope you enjoy this symphony of riches. And let me now invite another person without whom the bridge, and maybe I also would not be here, my co-founder at Harappa and the co-architect of Bridge, Pramath Raj Sinha, our founder and chairman. Pramath is eminently Googleable and needs no introduction, so I won't waste too much time. But of course, many of you know him to be the pioneering higher educationist that he is, and has set up 2 of India's best private higher education institutions. But what's most fun and most relevant for all of us at the Bridge is he's also a super enthusiastic moderator and a great host. And I think you'll see both those qualities be evident very soon as we begin the sessions and with the first session. So without further ado, let me welcome Pramath. Welcome, Pramath, and congratulations. We did it. The foundations of Bridge are laid.
Thank you, Stressy. Congratulations to you as well. You were not supposed to introduce me and set me up for failure by saying I'm a great host and an enthusiastic moderator. Now I have to be really on a high energy level. But thank you so much, and congratulations to you as well.
Thank you, Prabhat. Of course, I always must help you raise the bar. And with that, please take us to our first keynote, which I know is going to be an incredibly inspiring and important session on future-proofing our workforce. Over to you, Prabhat.
Yes, we couldn't be starting with a better topic and with a better guest for our keynote session than Ajay Piramal. Mr. Piramal is somebody that I have been fortunate to work with and have the highest amount of respect for. But before I introduce him, let me begin by introducing you to the first session of our conference. The first session is called Future Proofing Our Workforce. How to thrive, not just survive. As all of you know, this has been a big lament in India for years and years now, that even though we are the fastest growing trillion-dollar economy in the world, the numbers of our youth graduating from institutions that are employable remains very small, and something that has frustrated us for years and years. In a 2020 study, the Indian workforce reported the highest skills gap in the world after Brazil, where 94% of our employees admitted to a skills mismatch. Now, as disruptions further transform our world of work, the need to prepare our talent for the future, not just for successful careers, but also to meet the demands of industry, has never been more urgent. So the topic for this session, and indeed for the rest of the conference, is very much about how do academic institutions, who are in a sense our talent custodians, how do they prepare our workforce for success? In turn, how should companies evolve so that they ensure that the talent they hire thrives and not just survives? So what is the role, therefore, of both academia and employers? And that's what I hope we'll dive into this session on. I'd like to remind you all that time permitting, Mr. Piramal will be able to take some questions. So I request you to post your questions on the Q&A channel. We also have a reflection wall, which is the link to which will be posted in the chat box, where the audience can also contribute to the session and the discussion. So please do engage with us. Let me now take the privilege of introducing Mr. Ajay Piramal. Mr. Ajay Piramal needs no introduction, but he is one of our leading industrialists, philanthropists, and somebody who's really been an advocate for responsible entrepreneurship. He's the chairman of the Piramal Group. I've always known of them as a global conglomerate, but I was stunned to see that they are in over 100 countries. And as you may know, their interests range from pharmaceuticals to financial services and real estate. I don't know if this 100 number is dated, Ajay. He also established the Piramal Foundation, which champions several social impact initiatives, and I have been a beneficiary of some of the work that they've done, particularly with the Gandhi Fellowship. Mr. Piramal, of course, holds key positions in several companies, prominently amongst them, of course, the Tata Group, and several prestigious institutions, including the Board of the Dean's Advisors at Harvard Business School. He and I are very involved in Anant National University, where he's the president and chairman. He's also the chairman of the Pratham Education Foundation. Ajay, I've never had to formally introduce you, so now I'm learning so much about you. But thank you so much. It's a real privilege to have you, and thank you so much for sparing the time to join us.
My pleasure, Pramath. Thank you for that very generous introduction.
No, you deserve that and much more. In fact, there's so much more to you that I couldn't cover, but we have limited time. I did want to start by asking you, you run such a variety of businesses, and for-profit, non-profit, sectors, geographies, markets, young businesses, mature businesses. What are your views on what are some of the real non-negotiable skills, sector agnostic skills that you would like to see in a talent of the future?
So first, let me highlight the fact that it is across any sector, whether it is for-profit, non-profit, people are making all the difference. And in an environment like this, particularly, when in some ways you can see there's so many opportunities, because I'm very optimistic about the future. It's the people which make the difference between a well-run company and a not so good company. So that's, I think, just want to say that. And today, as you know, things are changing so rapidly. I mean, what we thought of also 2 or 3 years ago is changing. So I think probably the most important thing is for somebody to have the learning, the ability to keep learning on the job and to understand more and more what's happening. So how do you understand the latest trends in technology? How do you understand? And in that, I think it's not a degree that's important. I mean, you may be an engineer, but as you are saying in all the programs you are organizing, including in Ashoka or Anant, it has to be a much wider range. So I think that's important. The ability to learn, the ability to get to have the humility, if I would say, to get to meet a diverse set of people, understand from them what's happening, and they could be totally unrelated. It's not necessarily only business. It could be beyond business. And when I see many successful people, they're getting ideas from not only from business, forget their same area of business, but beyond business with artists, with musicians. So that's how one has to be.
So if I can just capture that point, because it's an important point, you are saying people make the biggest difference, firstly. Then you're saying in those people, the ability to constantly learn, learning how to learn, which is kind of a meta skill, but ability to learn. And there you're saying learning from very diverse set of people. And in fact, going even beyond the obvious set of people, like say if you are in business, only business people, but even going outside into non-business and the creative fields to learn is really the new requirement, if you will, of talent.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you look at your own organization, I mean, what efforts do you have to make people become like this? Are you finding people already from our education system that are oriented in this way? Do you make extra efforts? Are there constraints in this whole continuum?
So honestly, I'm not finding enough people from the say campuses who are thinking out of the box yet. There are some, I mean, I must say that there are some, and if you see the changes that are taking place and the number of unicorns coming, so there are some, but they're not enough. So what we are trying to do is, first of all, for instance, we do have a constant learning a university, what we call. One of the advantages that we've seen with this whole COVID is that how digital world has spread a lot. And in fact, I'm finding, and I think there was some research, I was just talking to the person who's doing digital programs for Harvard, that enough research has been done to show that the learning experience of the digital is sometimes even better than that in person, which I was surprised to, because I thought it was important to have relationships, but people are still developing relationships also in the digital program. So, well, first of all, we have this learning university which we have content which we have developed. We also tie up with other new universities so people get access to the talent, to the content. We measure that and we encourage people to do that. That's one. Then we've also adopted this whole concept of the agile thing. How do you make these agile workforces? We are making, for instance, big thrust into, we're changing our financial services sector from being a more wholesale oriented business to be a retail. And to do this, what we've done is that we've created all these task forces, if I may say, of agile. And we are finding that, the whole concept, if I can use the jargon which they use, of the minimum value product. And you start a product, then you keep, which satisfies some needs of the customer, but not all. And then as you get feedback from the customer, you keep changing. So rather than looking for, 6 months, 9 months for any plans or product to get implemented, this is done in a few weeks. So we've done that. We've adopted the whole agile in a big way. We've got people trained for agile, and we are finding that. And I'm actually very happy to say that people have adapted well to this. I was a bit worried because there's no hierarchy, and people are very cross-functional working, which have never worked before. But to me, the success of Agile, I would say, has been very heartening. So these are some of the things that we do.
So do you actually have, Ajay, a learning university within the group? It's called that?
Yes, yeah, but it is all remote. So we have some programs where people used to come in and learn as well. So for our select fast track people, we have a more intense program, which is both physical and through remote. It was not being done the last 1.5 years, but the university we do have for everybody. And it is a...
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So and you briefly mentioned this research from Harvard, but do you feel that some of the skepticism around digital learning and some of the concerns around there not being enough relationships being developed because it's remote and so on have come down thanks to what has happened through COVID?
Oh, there's no doubt. I think that COVID has pushed technology and the adoption of technology, somebody said, by 20 years ahead. So there's no question. And we've also realized the benefits. I mean, come on, to talk to so many people like we are doing today.
Sure.
I mean, frankly, it is a gift of COVID, if I can say that. Otherwise, you would have asked me to come there. I would have said yes, no. You would have had to get all your audience in. So it's much better.
No.
Also, I think just one thing I learned again in the Harvard advisory board is that, but you still need to, there is an expertise involved in the way you give, even you organize a whole digital program and remote. So that has to be done. And that's where Harvard has spent a lot of time. If you see their classes are as good as a real class and the interaction and so on. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think that you make a very important point there, because a lot of the digital learning that happened initially, people just picked up what was happening in the class and dumped it online, or recorded somebody giving a lecture in a room. And clearly things have evolved a lot from there. People are creating content for the medium.
Yeah.
Right. And then the agile workforce idea is an interesting one, because, you know, I don't know if our education institutions prepare our students to be agile, right? Because they kind of teach you very deep concepts and give you all this knowledge which is supposed to last you a lifetime. And here you are saying, form a small team, go make something happen, learn from it. Do you feel that there is a role education could play in making your workforce more agile?
I think so. I think we can't have a very fixed curriculum. And, you know, once you enter the college, I mean, I think Ashoka is doing something different, but otherwise in most colleges, when you go there, you know that from the first year till the last year, this is what I'm going to do in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. If you want to do something else, you don't have a choice to do it. So I think we'll have to become much more flexible. That's how the world is. You have to keep adapting, and you have to keep adapting to me on the go. You know, it cannot be fixed. And that's so you get the principles right. It's not that you can't, I mean, you need some fundas, if I may say, or you need within the rules or some basic things, you will have to have flexibility.
Right. And if you look at that, which the educational institutions have to do, and you look at the fact that you as a corporate are in fact now investing in a learning university, digital learning, these agile programs, it's also true, isn't it, that the boundary between education and employment seems to be blurring, because you are doing more of the stuff that typically educational institutions should be doing, and you're asking them to do more of the stuff that you're doing with agile.
So yes, it is blurring, but let me say that there is a knowledge which the education institutions give, which will be much more than what we could do in a corporate environment. And we also actually pick up from education institutions. So education institutions actually have a more important role to play. They just need to refashion their curriculum. And also in that, it's not only the curriculum, the faculty also has to be changed. So as I see it, I think we need much more interaction between faculty and education institutions, the students, as well as corporates, if you're talking in a corporate setup. Right. I mean, why can't we develop more case studies which are more Indian and more in this new world? You know, the older case studies may not now be as relevant as they were. Yeah. I mean, I remember the case studies which I also did when I was at Harvard, like Enron and all. If you do a case study, you teach that, I mean, there's no point. So, I mean, that's an extreme example, but there's so many such things.
So you're saying, you know, I think there is some reinvention required, clearly.
I think so. Just as we are reinventing business, I mean, look at what's happening even in the whole space of, I mean, another important thing I find, and which we need to give more focus in India as well as in universities, is the focus on data. I think with so much, the cost of data and the large amount of data that's available has come down significantly. So can we rely much more on data to take decisions? And that is another change I find that is happening. When I find that people, actually here I have to say that the people who've studied from foreign universities and who worked abroad come here, I find that there's a much bigger focus on data than what was there. So again, with all the power of AI, machine learning, let's put all that to use, and you can see there's significant benefit. For instance, I can tell you, we were doing we've been in the process of acquiring DHFL, which is
Yes.
the IBC in the bankruptcy code.
Yeah.
And we had to make many estimates about what would be the NPA or the bad loans that we would be inheriting. And after 6 months, 1 year, what is it? And we used a lot of the AI and all the data and came up with good estimates, I must say. And I think our team did a good job. And we can also see what we had predicted is coming more or less correct. So again, understanding using this data is another thing which I feel, people think, okay, it's only data which is there in an engineering school, or, that's not there anymore.
On that one, Ajay, because there's a lot of confusion and misperceptions about this whole data world, because I think people are slowly coming to terms that this is not just flavor of the month, that this is real. And you just demonstrated that with that very powerful example, because you are doing a massive acquisition, and for you, this is so important to estimate. But one of the things that people say is that, oh, this is all getting automated and you don't need humans, right? So where are you on that? Since you just went through that live example,
So,
do you see the role of skills and human skills in managing this world?
Absolutely, you need human skills. So first of all, data is available. To even put it into a proper form, you need to clean it up. That's where humans are do, because, as you know, if you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out. So the cleaning the data itself is a thing. But after that, even the analysis and then interpretation of that analysis requires human skill. And even designing the whole program. I mean, what are the assumptions that you will take in? How will you build the model is important, and that cannot be done by a machine. Yes, some things can be done, but I think the difference will come with the human touch itself. Otherwise, machine, you can do it, I can do it. The only reason why you will be more successful than I am is if you put in the human angle to it.
No, I
So
agree
it's
with you.
required.
Yeah, often people don't realize that it has to be the combination, and that certain things will get automated, but actually there's huge value addition that comes from the human that is involved.
So, the automated is that the huge amount of data, it's not physically possible for a human to do it. And, this is opening up many more possibilities. The range of possibilities has gone up, and that is the value of all this machine learning. But the human being has to be there at the center.
So there again, what are the skills of that human being, and are you trying to build those skills, the higher order data science skills, if you will? And
no, frankly, we are recruiting those people. We don't have that, but even understanding that, are people who have never done data science are now understanding it and using it. See, first there was, if I can say, a few years ago, there was hesitation on using it. And okay, what is it that they are going to tell us? Because sometimes the conclusions would be very different from what we think will happen. So I think that people are now seeing that over time that it has played out the way it has. And so to understand the data is what's important, or the conclusions of the data. But to do the whole, let's say, to set up the program and all, you still need the data scientists and the engineers.
Right. Now, I don't know if you already answered this in your first point, but I'm picking up some questions from the audience. So Rahul Singh is asking, what is the most important skill the Piramal organization values?
So first of all, I think what is most important for Piramal is the values itself. That are you a value-based person? Because for us, in the long run, and what do I mean by values?
Yes,
I mean
please.
the value of, so for instance, I'll tell you our values, but it can say, for us, values is knowledge, action, care, and impact. So what does knowledge mean? The ability to have a deep understanding of whatever subject you're in, and then to be open to get newer ideas. And we also mean innovation, because everything changes, whether it is in the field of profit, non-profit, there's a lot new things happening. How do you keep innovating? And these are not big scientific discoveries, but even small innovations, the way you do things, I think that's important. So for us, anybody who comes in, we look at how we first evaluate when people recruiting also, whether they fall into this category. We have some ways of seeing that, whether it's knowledge. So when it's action, we talk about integrity and entrepreneurship. Do you have integrity? I mean, that is basic for us. But do you have the entrepreneurial skills? And I think that's again becoming more and more important today. When you're talking about, being able to adapt from one to the other, open-minded, so that's it. Then the third one, we talk about care, which is humility. I think, again, that is so important for us. Because if you are not humble, you're not going to be able to, accept newer ideas, go and meet people whom you think are maybe junior to you in the organization, but they may know more about data science or the new stuff. I mean, frankly, so that. And then, of course, impact, how resilient you are. And so this is what we look at. So for us, values is important. And the skills, actually, what are those skills which these values are embedded? And then we keep on re-emphasizing on this. So for us, that's important.
Very interesting. A lot of these like innovation, entrepreneurship, humility, resilience are not typically things you can teach. So it's really through life experience that people are developing these. Is there a role you think education can play in building some of these values in young people these days?
I think so. I think we are not giving enough attention to values in our curriculum at all. And it is important. To me, that is what makes a difference between a good and, how do you stand tough times? I mean, look at what's happened during COVID. I mean, most of us have to go through challenging times. But if we had these values which were somewhere incorporated into our learning, I think it would have made a big difference.
Yeah. I see this reflected in some of your philanthropic work, Ajay. And is that something that you see happening through things like the Gandhi Fellowship, where young people are being put through a program which is slightly a variant of typical education, isn't it?
It is a variant, and exactly, actually our whole philosophy there is also based on values. And that is so important. And I can keep on talking about values, we can all talk about, but at the end of the day, they have to see them in action. So I think that's where the leadership has to play an important role. And we keep talking about so many examples that we pick up in our lives, in our businesses, and which demonstrate that, values makes a difference. And I've seen this across companies. I mean, you talked about the Tata board. I mean, you can see that the benefit coming on a daily basis. I can see the benefit coming to us on a daily basis. Wow. I mean, I can tell you the reason why DHFL we could get compared to many other people was because one of the things was the values which the brand brings it in. Correct. And I can't advertise it. If you advertise it, nobody's going to believe. It has to be actually done. So
interesting you should say this, because I was just looking at some research that our team did for another session that's coming up. And I was surprised to see that Generation Alpha, which is kind of the next gen of young people who are coming into the workforce, are actually looking to work in companies where there's a values match. The Gen Z, which was before Alpha, which is the current young people, they seem to want to work in companies where they share some passion, right? So if they're interested in climate issues and the company is also doing that, then they want to match up. But I think the next generation is becoming even more precise, like you are just being, in saying what are this company's values. So that way, I think as a company, you have to position yourself well for this new workforce that is going to come.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know this, but okay. Yeah,
yes, I just saw that.
But Pramath, to be, it is true. I find that people do come to work with us. They could get better opportunities outside, and very often they stay with us. I mean, better opportunities in terms of remuneration, but they stay with us because they are comfortable with the values. And if you talk about all these values I talked about, they're the same as you would practice at your home. There's nothing different.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well,
So it is
certainly,
in alignment.
certainly in the DHFL case, if I may say so, you've shown tremendous resilience given all the. all
But you
the-
know, it's interesting, but other than all the noise that comes in, but a lot of people were supportive of us only because they felt it's a value-based organization.
Yes. No, I'm certainly, given all the business groups, if I may say so, in front of you, and not to flatter you, but that is the perception about your group, that at least on
Thank you.
values, it stands apart. Question from Ashok Khosla, going back to our data discussion, though this values one is very interesting as well. How do we take away the fear of data and AI taking over from teachers? Most of the resistance of technology from teachers seems to stem from there. Have you any perspective on that?
So first of all, I mean, even I used to have some fear of this. Is it a big word? Is it something that, you know, like, okay, at my age, this is just jargon and it's too complicated for me to understand.
Yeah.
When I realized it, it's not for, I'm not a scientist, but I know that if I use the data, it is actually very simple and it makes it much clearer. And even if you know, earlier on in the good old days, the IT programs used to be so complicated. Till now, I've never understood whether there's an ROI on a SAP platform that you invest so much in. But in this, you can see the benefits immediately. You know, when I talked about agile, when you talk about the whole AI, machine learning, I mean, I can see that this was the conclusion that has come about. So it's not, the fear is more of the unknown, but when you face it, it's not that bad. And it is not replacing. So even teachers, unless, I mean, they're not data scientists. You can't expect a teacher who's never taught, who has never learned data scientist to be a data scientist. But otherwise, I think it's helpful. And we have to incorporate it in the learning. You have to incorporate it in our, if I may say, case studies, and usage of that should be more.
Ajay, we are right at the half-hour mark, and I know that we should end this on time to not impose on yours. So thank you so much. I just want to capture some of the points for the benefit of our audience, because it's been fascinating how much you've shared with us in the last half hour. I picked up this point about the ability to learn and learn from diverse sources, non-conventional sources, business people going into non-business creative. I think that was very powerful. You talked about the learning university, the importance of digital learning. This is something that we espouse a lot at Harappa, and I think it's great to hear people like yourselves talking about this in a positive way. The fact that you are building more agile and small groups, collaborative workforces, the idea of the MVP, it's for a group like yours to be talking that language, which is really sort of the new age industry's language, is fantastic.
Even I learned it recently.
Okay. Your confidence and your belief in data and the need for higher order human skills, the cognitive skills, the thinking skills, the interpretation skills, I think that's very powerful, because I think that could completely change the way we educate our young people. And then finally, the icing on the cake and the cherry on the top was your point about values, and I found that very compelling, and I'm so glad that you gave us live examples of how you're using some of these in the group. But thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate it.
Pramath, all the best. I think you're doing a great job, and your university is really different from others, and I mean it. So I just hope many of others will take your example. All the
this
best.
is a great keynote for our opening keynote for our conference, which, as you know, as I told you, is bringing academics and employers together for the first time, which is why we call it the bridge. Because, you know, usually the academics do their own conference and the corporates do their own. So for the first time, and there couldn't have been a better launch for the conference than this session. So thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we conclude the session, and I'm going to hand this over to our track host, Nikhil Gambhir, to take us forward. I will see you later in the day with some very engaging sessions with some guests that are to come in the afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later.
Thank you, Pramath and Mr. Piramal, for that extremely insightful conversation.